Welcome to another episode of the Helping the Brave podcast. I'm your host, Ed Parcaut, and today I welcome Jay Lilje, Air Force veteran, pilot, and founder of Jay Kristoff Handbags. From military service to combating human trafficking, Jared shares his journey, his passion for aviation, and how he's using entrepreneurship to create positive change. Don't miss this inspiring conversation about service, transition, and making a difference. Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Helping the Brave, and let's bring in our guest today, Jay Lilje. I get it right? Almost?
You got it.
All right, just checking. Sorry, my last name's Parcaut. No one ever gets it right, so I apologize.
No problem.
All right. So I read your story, but I want people to kind of know where your background is. Okay. There's one question I ask on every show. It's the only question I ask, which is what service and why?
United States Air Force, back in 91, when I enlisted, we just finished up the first Desert Storm, and I didn't really think I was cut out for college. So I enlisted in the Air Force, became a crew chief on the C-5, and that was my entrance into the Air Force. But why the Air Force over any other branch? Probably because when I walked by the recruiter's office, he happened to be in civilian clothes that day and seemed pretty laid back.
There's no right or wrong reason. I had a lady who they took her out for a steak dinner. That's why she joined them. My son's in the Army. I was in the Navy. He's in the Army because Army guaranteed what he was going to do. He's a combat medic. That's what he wanted to do.
Right.
He's colorblind, so there's not a whole bunch of other stuff he could do anyway. So,
yeah, I can't even imagine walking through life colorblind.
Yeah, it's the grayest stuff. Like he's a marksman in a range, but you get him out where there's trees and other thing, he can't hit anything. He has a marksman thing there, and he was getting yelled at by his whatever sergeant or whatever, and he's like, "I thought you were X-ray." He goes, "I can't see the difference in the metal thing and the trees back. It all looks the same to me." Yeah,
you can imagine that would be a problem.
Yeah, well. And luckily, fluids are pretty close, so it's no big deal in our body. So
there you go.
It's either clear or a color. So yeah,
it might be actually helpful in that line of work too. I don't know.
No, I was a medic. I was a corpsman in the Navy. There's only so many colors that come out, so
yeah,
that's what we have to worry about.
Well, thank you. So you were for that, and thank your son for what he's doing as combat medic. That's he's super important work.
Yeah, well, now he's moving on. We'll see what happens. So you went in as enlisted,
correct? And
then I take it you went to like a green and gold, or did you become an officer? Or
no, I did it probably. I don't know. I call it an unorthodox way. I stayed active duty the whole time, and just went to night school and weekend school and finished up a degree, and then applied for officer training school, and was fortunate enough to be accepted. So I didn't get to do any of those programs or ROTC or anything like that. It was just worked full-time, enlisted, and after almost 10 years, transitioned, left one day as a staff sergeant and went off to officer training school as a cadet, and then graduated as a second lieutenant. So I never had a break in service.
Right, but then you became a pilot, so that had to be unique to be able to go through that part of it.
That was all determined on my application to become an officer. We had there in that application process, you can have you can pick whatever job you'd like to be considered for, and I put that I wanted to be a pilot, and I didn't put down the other job that I would be happy with. And it's kind of funny that in the Air Force, when you apply to stuff like this, you can apply for what rated positions, and that's your pilots, navigators, and flying positions like that as an officer, or you can apply for what they call non-rated positions. That'd be logistics officer, maintenance officer, and things of that nature. And you'll go meet the boards of those like categories. So when they got my application, they saw that I wanted to be a pilot, and they went to the rated board, or all the rated officers board, and looked at it, and they selected me. And I was warned that I probably ought to put other jobs in there as well. But in my mind, And this was just my mentality. And I don't know if this played well for me or it didn't play well for me, or maybe it didn't matter, but it worked out. I wanted the pilot on that board to know that I didn't want to do anything other than be a pilot. I wanted to show that I was hungry to be a pilot. And I thought if they saw that I'd be willing to be anything else, then maybe I wouldn't get the nod. So I just wanted to let them know that I was hungry to be a pilot. And like I said, I don't know if it worked, if that played into it at all, but it worked out for me and I became a pilot. So.
And how long were you a pilot?
I started pilot training in 2002 or 2001 rather, excuse me. And I retired in 16. So 15 years as a pilot for the Air Force.
Okay.
And still I'm a pilot today.
Right. And prior to that, you were enlisted for how long?
Enlisted for almost 10 years as a C5 crew chief or mechanic.
Wow. Because I did the same. I got my bachelor's and master's while I was in. I actually finished my master's once I got out, because everybody was like, "Why don't you become an officer?" I'm like, in the Navy? There's no way I want to be an officer in the Navy, because I'd be on a ship, and I don't want to go. I got lucky. I was a corpsman and I saw a ship. I had my girlfriend on a ship and somebody else I saw on a ship, but I never was on a ship. And I'm
that's got to be pretty unusual for the Navy, huh?
Yeah, I got stationed at Camp Pendleton at a Marine Corps base first. And then they were like, okay, you're going to a ship or a specialty school. And I said, what specialty school is not on a ship for a medic? And it was physical therapy. I said, that's exactly what I want to do. And it was perfect right down the thing, because I was into triathlon, exercise and all that kind of stuff. So it was perfect for what I was doing. And then went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, finished that training, went back to Camp Pendleton, finished the training, and they just kept me. So cool. I was at Camp Pendleton in Southern California my whole time.
Excellent. Well, good for you.
Yeah. So I got lucky. And I told my son, he asked when he was signing up for everything, should I go see what the Navy does? I'm like, no, you're not going to be lucky like me. If you join the Navy, you're going to get on a ship, period. There's just no way around it.
Right.
Yeah, so that's my story. So, because I mean, a lot of people can't even, why don't you be reservist? No, because reservists at the time, I knew what they were doing at the time when I got out, that they were going to build up the reserves, and if we went to war, that's where they're going to pull from. And everybody was so used to how early on, for 40 years or whatever, we never really pulled on them. And we used them horribly. I've interviewed so many reservists who spent way more time over there than any active duty person did.
Right. Yeah, I'd served right alongside plenty of reserves deployed and stateside that were working just as hard as we were.
Yeah. So. I mean, and good thing that they get all the benefits now, because they were active instead of, good and bad.
Yeah.
All right. So you retired out, and when you, was it just one of those things that, okay, I've done my 15 years and it's time, or is there a requirement for pilots to only fly for so long?
My active duty service commitment was 10 years after earning my wings. So I stayed longer than that. I did a total of 25 years active duty. So it was one of those things where it was, they always tell you, you'll know when it's time to retire. And when you're done having fun with it, then maybe it's time to move on and let other people take over and push it in the direction it needs to go. But really, I thought 25 years, that was a good time. It was a good, I was in a great spot in my career, and I was with a unit that I thoroughly loved and enjoyed flying for. And at that point, I thought, it's not going to get any better than it is now, and it's time to go. So it was perfect.
And what plane did you fly? And
I started out flying C5s, and that was what I was actually a crew chief on as well. So I flew C5s, and then went to the C-17 and flew that for a couple of years, and then transitioned.
Jared, so people who don't understand aircraft, because they're going to be watching this, because they don't know what a C5, what typically would someone say that if they saw it, they would know that it was each one of those airplanes?
So the C5 is 4-engine, the biggest cargo plane we have. It'd be comparable to the size of approximately a 747.
Okay.
So that's gives somebody some perspective, and that's like I said, that's what I fixed when I was enlisted, and that's what the first plane I flew for the Air Force officially. Besides training planes, obviously, but right after that was a C-17, which is a smaller version of the C5. It's about half the cargo capacity. but again, 4-engine cargo plane. After my time in the C-5 and C-17, I went over to a different command called the Air Force Special Operations Command, and I flew a unique little airplane called the PZL M28 Skytruck. That was a plane that was actually developed by a Soviet company called Antonov, and it was the Antonov 28 or the AN 28. Then the Polish got rights to build it, and they built it out of their airplane manufacturing company called PZL, and they renamed it the M28, and upgrades to the engines and upgrades to the avionics, but it was still pretty cool. It still had Russian writing inside our cockpit, and some, the electrical system was still all the Russian design electrical system. So it was a super neat experience to fly that airplane. And I flew that and the PC-12, Pilatus PC-12 in my special operations unit. And that's the one that's pictured behind me is one of our PC-12s from the squad.
So the one prior to the one behind you, I mean, what did you move? Did you move people? Did you move cargo? I mean, what was the?
It was an infiltration and exfiltration platform, or a platform that we used to bring people in and out of different places. We airdropped out of it, so we could resupply our forces that were supporting on the ground by the air, or we could just land almost anywhere and give them what they needed. We were known for landing on dry river beds, dirt roads. It was probably the best flying I've ever done in my life. It was the most interesting, the most challenging, and we did it all day and night, sometimes night vision goggles, sometimes during the day, but it was, imagine a bush plane with 2 engines, and we're going in and out of places that you would never expect to take an airplane.
So you're still a pilot today.
That is correct.
Do you? Yeah. Okay, we'll get into the other company in a second. But do you still fly commercially for people, or just for yourself?
No, I fly commercially for a major airline inside the U.S., and that's how I provide for my family. And in the other companies, when we get to talking about them, I'll let you know what we do with that revenue. But ultimately, it's I made that transition in 2019 to an airline, and have been enjoying it ever since.
But it's not the same rush, huh? Flying into those little runways.
No, it is certainly not. And it's probably a good thing that it's not, because it needs to be very structured and very, I hate to say the word boring, but that's probably a good way, because I don't think you need me entertained as a pilot. Because if I'm entertained, that means passengers are terrified. So, and I certainly don't want any of that. It's from going from one extreme to the other, where I'm landing on a dirt road in the middle of the night on night vision goggles, or into a dry river bed, or something like that. You can imagine, the planning that it takes to get to that point, to know that it's going to work out. So we never did anything that I questioned. Never did anything I said, this isn't going to work out well for us. But when you're landing in the grass, going uphill, or whatever that happens to be, you need to, and you do that over and over, and you do that for years, it kind of sets your baseline at different. So then when I came to the airlines, and I am very grateful to have an airline job, because it allows me so much flexibility to create in other ways. But it's very nice to see that it's very structured. There's nothing you got to figure out. Everywhere we go, it's absolutely planned out. And the things we have to deal with are the weather and the rain and things like this, that may impact whether we are on time or if it's malfunction with the airplane. But it's never wondering, hey, nobody's ever landed a plane here on this dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And you don't have to fly over it to see, hey, our wings going to fit in, or do we need to send somebody in there first to cut down trees so we can get the wings in, and we don't have people down there trying to figure out, is it strong enough to hold the airplane? We found out in Afghanistan, some of our guys did that if there wasn't enough water in the in the sand, enough water content in the sand that, once it dried out in the dry season, it wasn't going to support the airplane. So a couple of them got towed out by MRAPs and digging them out. So that was pretty interesting.
But the one thing about it, must have been they hired you as a pilot for this new company. They're like, well, if anything ever happens, he's the guy who could help, know how to get out of it. Don't have to worry about it. He can land it anywhere. Kind of like the Hudson,
Yeah. Well, I don't say that my skills are any better than any other pilot out there. I certainly don't want to. My opportunities have been different to allow me to exercise those skills, but I can tell you, I think everything that I've ever done with my career flying wise, you could probably pull me out, put another pilot in, teach them have the same instructors that taught me, and we're going to have the same result. So it's not about me as much as opportunity.
Right. But I'm just saying, you going through what you went through, there's not a ton of guys like you who've done that. And that's why the commercial industry really wanted pilots from the military, because they flew more than anybody else and they never had to worry about them.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, because when you go to regular school,
some unique experiences.
Yeah. And many, many, many hours.
Right.
Yeah. Right. All right. So then when you retired out, now you're working for the airline, and let's get into what else you do now.
Well, before I went to the airline, I had an opportunity. I got a call from somebody, and I had an opportunity to work. They asked me to come work with them for an anti-human trafficking rescue company, and they needed a pilot that had some unique experiences and have been in some weird situations and have flown a lot of different airplanes. And at the time, I'd done a lot of civilian flying too, so I was very familiar with piston engine airplanes and different models of just your regular Cessnas or Piper aircraft and things like that. So they asked me to come on board and fly for the rescue company, which I jumped at the chance. I thought that would be fantastic work. But what I realized very quickly was how underfunded all the nonprofits are in the anti-trafficking space. And it doesn't, not just the company I was affiliated with, but all of them, I believe, could use extra funds. I mean, the problem is a lot bigger than what I think it even gets news for today. But back in 2016, nobody was talking about anti-human trafficking stuff. So I jumped at the chance of that and realized that I probably would do better, not just doing one mission at a time in an airplane where they needed me, because they're not going to need a pilot for every mission. So instead of just doing that, which I've already said about, there's a number of people that could go out and do the stuff that I've done. Why don't I create companies that generate revenue to help fund these nonprofits? I'd like to create a for-profit company that can go out and do this work, and we be affiliated as an anti-trafficking company, but generating profits for these nonprofits to go out and do the good work. And that got me into, strangely enough, the women's luxury and women's fashion, and because I saw through another airplane I was affiliated with how people spend money in the fashion industry and handbags, especially. The first time I ever held a $25,000 handbag in my hands, that made me realize that there's this enormous spotlight on the fashion industry, and why don't we take some of that spotlight and shine it into the darker areas of our society, like trafficking, and try to bring attention to it through fashion and do something about it through fashion. Because if our society is already spending this much money in these areas, well, let's peel off some of that revenue and help kids. And that's what it boils down to. If I can just put it simply, nobody needs to go through that, and let's do everything we can to stop it. And so that's how I started my company, Jay Kristoff.
And what is Jay Kristoff?
It's a women's luxury brand. Right now we're specializing in handbags, all handmade here in the United States, with imported Italian leather, and 20% of our profit goes to nonprofits that the customer gets to choose. So essentially what happens is, if you were to go in there, not that you're interested in buying a handbag, but if you were to go on for it.
I have a wife, so. Well,
hey, there you go. As a gift, maybe that's the thing. But when you go into the the website. The customer sees our bags, they determine which one they like, and then they get to select where their money goes. We partner with several different nonprofits, and they go to checkout. They select where their money goes. So let's say you're the customer is in Salt Lake City and they want to support something locally. Well, Dahlia's Hope in Salt Lake City is a charitable anti-trafficking company that their money can go right to support their own communities. So it's not about what I do with the money. It's about them buying our product and they get to choose where their money goes. So,
and who designs the bags?
Well, the majority of them are a design concept that I came up with. Now I say the design concept is something I came up with, but then I hand it off to my artist friends that help me bring my idea to life. You know, when I draw something, it looks like a child drew it. You know, I'm no artist. I can fly an airplane, but I certainly can't draw very well. But I can portray my idea. And they all have some aviation inspiration to them, and we're going through some updates with our website to bring that to light to everybody. But once we get there, you know, my friends take care of it, and they'll suggest stuff too, like, hey, you know what, I think we ought to change this, do this, and this brings your idea better to light. And so I have some help in that aspect of it. I come up with the idea, and then we collaborate to make sure it's really hitting the mark for what we want it to be. But they all have an aviation theme to them. And but it's been a lot of fun. I've never designed anything like this in my life, and it's fun to sit down, look in an airplane, and figure out where a handbag is hiding in that thing.
Yeah, I'd like to know how, because I pulled up your website. That's what I was doing. But before I pulled up, realized my keyboard died, so I had to plug it back in. And so the question I have is, how are they designed? Which one has how is it designed by aircraft? I mean, like something.
So let's I'll go to the website as well. Let's go to, if you're up at the top, and you see collections to your right. Scroll to that and hit the Catherine. And it brings a nice big picture of this clutch, the quilted clutch. Looking at that clutch, it's got the quilting pattern in there, and that's actually designed off the Wright Flyer, Orville and Wilbur's first airplane in 1903. That stitching pattern is basically the cables that hold the two wings together on the body of the bag, and then that flap that comes over on the top would be representing of the wing fabric on their airplane. And it's actually named after their sister, Catherine. So that's just one example of how I looked at something in aviation and decided to bring it in through luxury handbags.
That is unique.
Yeah.
I mean, because I would never have thought that was about that plane.
I figured it was important to tie the bags to who I am as well. They don't have to be about me, but I've been in aviation since I was 19. And I think it's important to have something in there. I mean, so we have our mission, proceeds going to anti-human trafficking, which is fantastic, but that's really what I want to do. Right. And when a woman comes out to buy a bag, why would that bag be any different than any other leather clutch that you see? She could go to Chanel and find a beautiful quilted clutch as well. But it's not inspired out of aviation. It's not designed by the former Air Force pilot, and so trying to get that story out to people is where we're at right now. And we're going to be making, like I said, some updates to the website, which I'll send you later. But I think people are going to really enjoy the story behind it. At first, I was a little bit timid about telling the story of how I designed it, or with any of the bags, really, because part of it is, well, I'm a pilot by trade. I'm not a fashion designer. I never gone to a school for design. And so I just wanted to see if anybody liked them. And turns out people like them and they want to know more and my brand manager has been working on me to come out of my shell, do more things like this, get in front of the camera and have podcasts and tell the story of, why I designed a bag the way we did, and how is it finished product? Why is it here? What does it look like? Because the mission behind it really is, although it might be what's in my heart to get done, the bag's got to be attractive to the customer. And that's going to be for any number of reasons. And the story behind it, I think, is really important.
I think so too. I would, on your next rebrand of your site, do you have videos for yourself on there talking about the handbags and how you designed them?
We'll get there. We've got the aviation influence for each bag. We'll show the different things, and we'll show some of them are my experiences. The tote, for example, has a lot to do with my experience in the C5. And that's called the Aero Lux. When you're browsing through,
I already know them all.
Yeah. So the Aero Lux has key aspects of my days as a mechanic on the C5 that you would never guess. If I just hand you the bag, you'd never be like, how are you going back to your mechanic days to get to this? But I think once people see it, they'll like it and enjoy it.
Yeah, but people don't know that. I mean, even look at your site. It doesn't say that because
it will, though. Yeah. It will when like I said, we just had a meeting this morning before I came on with you, that we were going over the new website updates, and I think people are going to enjoy it. I've been convinced now that we need to tell more of that story.
Yeah, because people want to know the background of things.
Right.
That's just me I've been on radio since 2018. I own a mortgage company. This is not what I do normally. I got on radio in 2018 for a radio show called Real Estate Jerky. We give you something to chew on. It has to do with real estate finance. But from then we went to community, and then they want us to branch out from there and go on, get syndicated and all that stuff. Well, I turned it into podcasting also, and then I did all this other stuff podcasting. So people want to know who you are,
right?
And until I got on radio, nobody knew who I was or why.
Right. And I think that's been one of the biggest things for me and struggles with me is that I never, coming from my background, I never tried to I didn't have a social media presence when I was in the Air Force, quite deliberately. I didn't need that extra scrutiny if something went wrong. I didn't need my family to have to be manipulated through social media if something went wrong on a mission. So I just avoided it all. And now I'm starting to come out of my shell a little bit, and we'll keep going. But it's all a learning experience for me, and definitely a growing experience.
Have you thought about adding other pilots to design their own bags? Like the first female combat pilot, and just unique things.
Yeah, no, I've talked to some other people that we could to collaborate if they wanted to do something, and we could go into looking at that. I've not reached out to any pilot per se for exclusively that, but that's not a bad idea at all. People who. It's harder for ourselves to do things. It's easier for other people to see things for us. Right.
When I just got on this whole thing, one of my previous mentors, he was like, you don't know what you do anymore, do you? And I'm like, I do have no clue what I do anymore. I do mortgages, this, and this. He's like, you tell people stories across multiple mediums. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense, because I help people get a loan, especially veterans and everything else. And then I talked about their story here and in my other 3 podcasts I do. And so it's easier for somebody else to see that. I see that your bags could get so much more story. I mean, you're amazing what you're doing and what you went through, but then the people are going to go, what's next? What's next for the, so.
Well, what's coming out for our company, I've just recently designed 2 brand new ones. So they're going through the process right now. I sat down and I spent a couple of weeks in the design process and inspiration. They're now off at one of my artist buddies to make them look something presentable, and we'll go through the sampling of them and get that going. And what I hope to do is expand the brand from handbags into other luxury goods. I'd like to get into skincare and makeup. I'd like to get into stuff that has a little bit lower price point, so more people can be involved, and I think skincare and makeup might be the way to do that. So those are the things that are on my mind, because I want more people involved with Jay Kristoff and what our mission is than just the people that can afford a $3,000 handbag.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people out there spending that kind of money.
Well, that's good for me.
No, I know because
Send it my way.
that's why there's Coach and all those other companies. I mean,
Yeah,
my wife had so many purses for so long, and they weren't cheap, and she
yeah,
just doesn't buy it as much as she used to.
yeah.
Just because certain things have happened, and she's like, I really don't need them. I don't use
Right,
multiple bags, and the way that,
right,
but it's nice to have a good bag to go out. It's just like me with wallets.
right.
You could design some wallets too.
Yeah, and we've thought about that and getting into some products for men, and happy to explore that. One of the things that your listeners should know too is I'm completely self funded. I've done so when I was saying I'm very grateful for working for an airline. That's what provides all the seed funding for what we do. It's very important for me not to take on debt or have to pay investors unless I can prove that that's going to scale me at a rate that doesn't impact the mission. Where I can write, if it's gonna take away opportunities to help kids that have been trafficked, then I'm going to continue to self fund it and let it grow. But depending on, you just got to run those numbers. But for up to this point, that's just been on me and my family to fund this. So anyway, I don't know. I think that's something something important, and it might make a difference to people when they know, when they're out for an expensive bag, to know, hey, this is kind of a bootstrap deal, and let's support this. Let's support the mission and the cause. And let this company grow.
Yeah. I don't think people really realize how the different trafficking that's out there and what's done, and how people need help.
Yeah,
I'm in California. I used to be in Southern California. It was drastic down there, and both ways, not just one way.
yeah,
And people don't realize that. Um, and just things that people don't, and I think it's just not in certain people's faces, and they don't care about it. Or I don't want to say they don't care about it, they just don't know about it. And we
right.
need to get more information out there.
And to be fair to everybody, is not every cause out there can be the top concern for every person, right? There's plenty of good causes out there that people need to, that people want to be a part of. I happen to go into this one because of the invitation I had, and had something very personal happen where we used our own recovery efforts for a family member. So it is very near and dear to me that this is my mission, and it will be anti-trafficking. So I totally understand when somebody else is, they don't think about it because their mission might be, pick whatever other good causes out there. I totally understand that.
Yeah. And I get it because I had an ex-girlfriend years and years ago, but her boyfriends took her and her friend down there, and next thing you know, they were sold. Luckily,
Yeah.
her dad was in special forces, and so him and a bunch of his buddies went down there and got her back.
Yeah.
But people don't realize not everybody has that help to get them back.
Yeah, and people don't realize too that the trafficking, it doesn't always mean that you cross an international border. It doesn't always mean that you were kidnapped, thrown in a van, drugged up, and sold. It can happen very insidiously too, with a few bad decisions, and the next thing you know, you're in a trafficking situation and you didn't see it coming. So, it's it can be right in your hometown. You don't even have to leave town, and all of a sudden you find yourself being trafficked, and it's a bad deal. And I just want to do everything I can, like I said, to shine a spotlight on it, to raise money for the rescues and for the rehabilitation and for the prevention, because that's really how I see it. There's three pillars that hold it all up. Prevention being the best. Obviously, if we can get rid of it, that's fantastic. But then there comes recovery efforts and rehabilitation efforts, because once a person's been through that, they're going to need a lot of help and a lot of guidance. So we're happy to partner with companies that do all of it.
Jared, thank you so much for coming on the show today and telling your story and everything that you're doing. I really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right. So if you people, I know you said you don't do social media in the past, but you do it now. I assume you're on LinkedIn.
I am on LinkedIn, just my name. You can look me up. Jay Kristoff is also on LinkedIn as a company. You can, if you go to the website that's there on your screen, jaykristoff.com, and scroll down to the bottom, you can get links to all of our social media. We're on Instagram. I think it's j.kristoff official on Instagram. That's probably where we're most active. And if anybody leaves a message there, it's me talking to them directly. So I do all the messaging.
And that's what's, I mean, people don't realize, and it seems like that way on everybody on Instagram, that most people who are replying back is the actual person, because just that's how it works. And it just works better that way.
I don't make the reels. That's taken care of by my wife, but I reply back and I do all the talking on there if we have some engagement. So I always look forward to that.
All right. Anything else to add? Is there anything I didn't ask you I should have asked you, or anything else you want to put in the show before we go?
No, I think it's great. I appreciate the opportunity. It's always good to get out in front of people and let them know what we're doing. And also for the nonprofits that are out there, let them know that there's for-profit companies that are working hard to get up to speed so we can do more and help out.
And no problem. Thank you. And I'm going to throw some other, people don't realize that there's 43,000+ nonprofits for veterans. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot. And that's what the biggest problem with our, we're vets. There's like 18 million of us. And the problem is there's so many of them, they overlap and they don't help each other. It just, everybody, I think they're way more than we need for that industry, for us. Right?
Well, and I've been asked why not become a nonprofit. And that's the biggest reason, is there's so many out there that are already on the front line doing the work. Let me, I don't need to be the tip of the spear. I don't care about that. But if I can be the fuel for getting everything done, then let's do that. And I think it's a good place to be.
Yeah, because they were asking me, because I do a fire walk for veterans here in Modesto, California. And the second year was just recently, and third year, and they were like, when are you going to become a nonprofit? When are you going to be this? It's like, okay, well, I got to figure out what the plan is going forward and how big this thing's going to be. Plus, it's not my only thing I'm doing.
Right.
And so, I understand where you're coming from.
Yep. Well, I appreciate all you do out there, Ed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jared. All right. And again, thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate you telling your story. Thank you.
You bet. You bet.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Helping the Brave podcast. A huge thanks for Jared for his inspiring journey from Air Force crew chief to pilot, his mission-driven work fighting human trafficking through his luxury brands. Jay Kristoff. Remember, your story matters. Stay brave, help others, and join us next time for more incredible stories of service and purpose.